Today I want to take you behind the scenes a bit and give you a tour of the network setup that I built to support my YouTube channel, City Planner Plays. I've had this channel running for about 4 years now, and I've been releasing 2 to 3 30 to 60 minute videos per week, with most of those videos being in 4K. So as you can imagine, my storage needs are huge, particularly since I'm a digital pack rat that saves everything. So initially, I built my own network attached storage, or NAS, for saving my archival footage. This actually might look familiar if you watched my City Skylines 2 hardware guide, because I tried to run City Skylines 2 on this old NAS, and as you can imagine, it didn't work very well. Anyway, this PC was purchased from an electronics recycler for 50 bucks, and it had everything that I needed other than the drives. So I picked a few of those up, I installed Rockstore, which is an OS for NASs, and I hit the ground running. And it was fine, a little bit slow, but fine. Until one day, when my drives corrupted seemingly at random, and I lost approximately 100 videos worth of footage. And though I was able to recover some of the files, they lost their extensions and their file names, so they were basically useless to me. And that made me realize that I needed a better storage solution. So I was telling my brother-in-law about my issues, and he recommended that I check out Synology, and I've been using them ever since. If you're a prosumer user, they're basically perfect. Drop in a drive, power it up, and you're off to the races. The OS is already installed, it's stable, it gets regular updates. They even have an app store and a really easy to use interface. And because of this, the install base is huge, and there's information all over the internet about how to upgrade them and use them. I feel like I've got to add to that whole dropping in a hard drive thing, because over the last couple of years, there's been a little bit of controversy as Synology has narrowed the brands that they'll accept in their Synology. But needless to say, if you select the right NAS, you don't run into any of those issues. So I've carefully selected a Synology that has a wide range of drives that it can accept. I also like that I could easily drop in a 10 gig network card and potentially get speeds fast enough to edit directly from the NAS. And that little rabbit hole got me into Ubiquiti, which is why I now have a Ubiquiti setup with 10 gig connectivity in a few different spots in my house. And at this point, this has become my hobby. It's something that I really enjoy doing, and I'm always tinkering and changing things to try to improve things. So I figured today I would give you a little tour of this setup while I make a couple of changes. These changes will include rack mounting a PC that I'll use for my internet radio station over on Master Plan Music, as well as moving the drives from my initial Synology into a rack mounted solution and adding an expansion unit, because once again, I'm running lowish on storage space. And by the end, I will bluntly have an absolutely ridiculous amount of storage. So let's just dive right in, and we'll start out with a PC build. This is the rack mount case that I decided to use for this build. Nothing all that special about it. It's 2U, it's pretty basic. But the reason I selected this one is it allows me to install a full-size graphics card because the slots on the back are horizontal. But that meant a lot to me because I didn't want to have to buy a new graphics card. I just wanted to reuse existing components and rack mount this thing as cheaply as possible. And for the most part, this build is pretty smooth. I was able to drop in my existing ITX motherboard, add my power supply, though this gave me a little bit of a challenge. You can see that there's this extension cable. Because of where the power supply sits in this case, right at the front, you have to have an extension cable running to the back of the case. And this was the reverse version of the cable, so I couldn't actually put my power supply in. Now, there is another cable in the box, but there are no instructions telling you any of this, so you kind of just have to make mistakes along the way. Now, the thing that made this frustrating is you had to run this through the center of the case. There was only a small hole with a daughter board in front of it, so it took a little while to get this right, but I thought I was home free after this. I was wrong. And that's because the whole reason I bought this case, the graphics card installation, was actually much more complicated than I expected it to be. First of all, it didn't come with a riser cable, so I had to buy that, but whatever. Got that installed, and I realized that I could not actually mount the graphics card because the bracket that holds the graphics card into place rubs against the graphics card. And I tried some other graphics cards, and they all have this problem. So it's an issue with the bracket that comes with the case. Thankfully, I had a tin snips on hand, so I was able to modify this bracket so that I could go around the graphics card. But if you buy this case, just know that this is an issue. It's a design defect, and the only way to fix it is to modify the case. But after that was done, I checked to see if the PC posted, which it did, and everything was good to go. Before we go any further with the PC, I've got to make some changes to my network rack. So I figured this is a good time to kind of walk through it. I'll show you what's in here and why I have everything that I have. So at the very top is a monitor. This is actually going to be connected up to the Master Plan Music PC. It's what I'll run OBS on. Underneath that, I've got a Synology RS 1221 Plus. This is a rack-mounted Synology. It is wonderful. It's actually got a full SSD array with 8 terabytes of storage. All of my current projects are on this particular Synology. So anything I'm currently editing or recently have edited, all of my music, all of my assets, transitions, all of that, it's all right here. This is connected via a 10 gig card. It has an SSD cache, so it's very, very fast. Absolutely love this. In fact, we're going to be adding another one of these, but I'll get to that in just a second. Underneath there, we've got a Unify Enterprise XG switch. This is a 10 gig switch, and this is how I'm able to have 10 gig all throughout my house. And underneath there, we've got a Dream Machine SE. I love this thing because it allows me to run all of my security cameras right through it. So I've got a surveillance hard drive in here, and I do have security cameras. And then I've got 2 internet connections. Right here is my AT&T fiber running directly into my Dream Machine. And right here is actually a new addition to my server rack. It is a T-Mobile 5G internet backup. So this is, I believe I'm limited to 160 gigabytes per month. It's a backup solution, but I love this because I've had many problems where my fiber will drop out for just like 10 seconds, and that's enough that it will disconnect me from OBS and end the stream. So that's why I've been having issues with Master Plan Music, and that's also why, because I was adding this to the rack, why I thought now was the time to rack mount the PC. Now, going to the bottom, I've got a DS1522 Plus. This is actually my personal NAS, so all of my personal files, my wedding pictures, my kids' artwork, my taxes, all of that is on there, along with an MB server. And then underneath that, I've got a DS1821 Plus. And this has been a very serviceable and very good NAS for me. It is where I have all of my archives. I also have all of my Time Machine backups, and I back up critical files from my SSD and my personal NAS to this one, and I package that together and send it off in my C2 backup in Seattle. So very important drive. It's got 120 terabytes that I can use. I got about 65% of the way full. So I want to add additional drives so I don't have to untangle my digital life and delete things. I would much rather be a digital hoarder. So I was starting to look at 12 and 16 bay solutions, but all of the new Synologies that are 12 or 16 bay require you to use proprietary drives. And if I use the drives that I have in here, which are Seagate, Iron Wolf Pro, NAS drives, excellent drives, if I use any of those, I will enter an error state. So it's just not palatable to me to buy 12 to 16 new drives and attempt to sell these, which I wouldn't buy a used drive. I don't know why anyone else would. So as a result, I've decided to buy another RS1221 Plus with the extender. So that will get me up to 12 bays, and then I can add in 4 more 22 terabyte Iron Wolf Pro drives. So that is my goal. So I have another one of these. We're going to be installing this, but before I can add the Master Plan Music PC to this, I want to migrate that Synology to that RS1221 Plus, add in the extender underneath it. Then we're going to take this right here, the 5 bay, and migrate that to the 8 bay, and I'm going to give this to my buddy Mike. So this is something I'm a little bit nervous about. I know that the first thing I have to do is disable the SSD cache on the 1821 Plus. And then I've been following a channel called Space Rex, and he says I can just remove the drives from here and put it in the new Synology, and it should just recognize it. And the first thing I have to do is I had to make sure everything was up to date. Done that. So now we're going to go ahead and disable the SSD cache, power this thing down, move the drives over, and hope for the best. So let's get started with that. Before I can power this NAS down and remove the drives and put it into my new NAS, I need to disable the SSD cache. So for that, I'm going to go into the storage manager and find my storage pool. And I know it says storage pool tool. That was a mistake from when I initially set this up. I thought I could just rename it. I cannot. So it's much more work to fix it than it is just to leave it. It bothers me, but we're going to accept some imperfection. At the bottom here, the SSD cache, I'm just going to remove this, and I'll need to enter my password. And now that's unmounted, so I won't lose any data. It's moving all that data back into my storage pool. So now I should be able to just shut this thing down. And as soon as this powers off, I can grab the drives and throw them in my new NAS. All right, I pulled my old NAS out of the server rack, and we're gonna unbox and get all the hard drives loaded into this one. I've also got my PCI Express adapter that's gonna go inside of this. That's gonna allow me to put the SSD cache in here, as well as have 10 gig coming from this unit. I'm also gonna switch the RAM out from this unit and put it in here because I wanna make sure that this is as fast as it can be. And here is where we put our 10 gig and M.2 combined card. And right here we've got our RAM. And there we are. This thing is good to go, ready to be installed inside of my server rack. And then I have one more thing to unbox. This is a Synology RX 418, and this is the extender bay. This thing looks almost identical to the server that we just loaded up with drives. The main difference is that it's half the thickness, and we've got to install our brackets. And now that these are ready, let's get these things installed in my server rack. Okay, we're back at the server and ready to start loading things in. But I'm noticing something right off the bat that's going to be a problem. This is a server, here's the add-on, and then this is the PC. So I've got to move things around. And if I'm moving things around, I kind of want to make things look nice. But here's what I'm thinking. The SSD array right here, the archive Synology underneath that, the extension here, the 10 gig switch with it underneath that, then the patch panel. I'll get rid of this blank, then the Dream Machine, the pass-through, then the PC, and then the power. And the reason why I want to put the PC above the power is we have that vent for the power supply, and I think it's important that we keep clearance there. So that is the game plan. I'm just gonna get rolling on it, and we'll see how it goes. This right here, this is a thing of beauty. I'm really excited about this. I think this looks outstanding. Obviously, there's a few more things that we've got to do. We've got to get power to all of this new equipment. We've got to get Ethernet hooked up to all this new equipment. And then I've got to cable manage. I know that I should do it tonight, because if I don't do it right away, I'm not going to do it. We'll see if I get to it. I'm really excited to start the migration, so I might get this stuff powered up, start the migration, because I think that index is going to need to rebuild, which is going to take forever, and then I'll do a bit of cable management. Okay, everything is hooked up, but I will be honest with you, I am not looking forward to cable managing all of this. It's going to be a disaster. It's been years of adding a couple of things here and there, and basically cable managing on the fly. So I need to do a legitimate, all of this all at once, all the power cables. It's going to be a mess, but I will show you the end result at the end of the video. But for now, let's power things up, and then let's go and migrate those hard drives. That's going to take a while. Okay, I'm going to apologize to you guys up front. My office is trashed right now. There are Synology boxes everywhere, but I'm also on the Synology website, and I think I figured out what we have to do. So I have to figure out how to find my NAS using the web assistant. So I have to either go to Synology NAS 5000 or find.synology.com, and it's not showing up. My personal device and the SSD array are both showing up, but not the new device. You know, it's funny, I just remembered something. The first time you boot up a Synology, if you throw in a 10 gig card, you can't just start it up with the Ethernet plugged into that card because the card's not enabled yet. So I had to go and move the Ethernet to one of the 1 gig ports, and now it's showing up right here in my device list. And there it is. It's showing my old device and my new device. All I gotta do is migrate, and then it's gonna take 10 minutes approximately to get this going, or not. Okay, and that only took like a minute, so that was very surprising. I'm wondering now though if I'm gonna be able to load in my old dashboard or if it's gonna give me a new IP address. Okay, and after just a couple of minutes, we're back in. This is a different IP address, but I'm not using my 10 gig connection. And after signing in, we're back in business. I'm back into the server. Now, one thing I'm noticing is that we are now in a warning status. So I'm gonna go to the storage manager and see what's going on. Cannot add certain drives to the system partition. We'll hit repair. And it says it's healthy now, so I guess I will just take that as a win. Everything seems fine. The big thing now is I need to set up my SSD cache. So I'll go to create SSD cache, and I'll make this a read-write cache. Then I'll grab my 2 M.2 drives, take all the defaults, all the data will be erased. That's okay. We unmounted them. That's one of the reasons why we did that. and we should be good to go. The big thing now is I need to get back to my 10 gig connection, and I need to change my IP to line up with what I used to have before. So I'm going to switch this over, and hopefully I can pull things up via my 10 gig connection. Okay, so now I switched my Ethernet back over, and now I'm back at findmysynology.com, and I see it right here. And here we are back in, and you can see that I'm using LAN 5, which is the 10 gig card, so everything is working fine. But I wanted to make sure my speeds are correct. So over on my Mac, I've been running a disk speed test, and I'm getting about 950 write, about 1050 read, which is kind of on par with what I'd expect with this setup. So things are looking fantastic. Now I did have to do one more thing off camera, and that was I had to go into the control panel underneath external access. I had to re-sign into everything. So that was an issue. I had to unlink my old Synology from my Quick Connect ID and then re-sign into Quick Connect and then get everything linked up here. But now my Quick Connect ID is the exact same as it was before, and it should be easy for my editor to get on should they need to access the archive drive. So I'm feeling really good about this. It's been a few weeks since I recorded the last part of the video, and I wanted to show a couple of changes that I've made to this setup. Starting up here with this monitor stand, I decided to mount the monitors on this tall stand with a glass base. The reason why I've done that is it's not very wobbly then. The monitors shake a little bit, but the stand itself is very, very sturdy. So this has been a huge improvement in terms of cleaning up the overall server space. The second thing that I've done is I've gone ahead and added 4 24 terabyte drives to the new RX 418 that we installed a couple weeks back. These were on sale for Black Friday at B&H Photo, and I had to pull the trigger. They were like 40% off. So I now have 1/5 of a petabyte of storage in the main archival Synology. Next, I moved my gaming PC right here. This is the main PC that I game on stream. It's also the main recording PC that I have, and it's in here because I picked up an Ethernet KVM, which you can see right here. This thing's amazing. So I've got 3 Ethernet jacks in my office. I grabbed one of them and I hooked it up to the receiver box in my office. And it's just amazing. You wouldn't be able to tell that my PC's not in there, but that it's not as noisy and that it's not as hot. So it's been a huge improvement. And then the other thing that you can see is there's cable management, and you know what? It's not perfect. Reasonably, the biggest improvement here is that I had a bunch of zip ties before, and that's just not very smart. So I replaced all the zip ties with these Velcro straps, and they're allowing me to move things if I need to. In fact, this is all of the madness that used to be back there. So I went and I clipped those all out, replaced it all with all these Velcro straps. And even though it's ugly, it's out of the way. It's nice and clean from the front. And bluntly, I'm very happy with the way that everything's turned out. Now, throughout this entire process, I feel like anytime you work on your home lab, there's always one thing that you want to change. And for me, I'm now realizing that I probably need a better UPS. I think that, I'm getting 20 minutes, and I would love for it to be longer so that the master plan music channel wouldn't necessarily just go down if I had a power outage that wasn't all that long. So that's probably a next step. But for now, I'm really happy with how this has all turned out. And with that, I think we're going to leave it here. And I hope that you like this. This is going to be the kind of video that you can expect on this channel. It'll be a little bit weird, a little bit different than what you'd see on the main channel. There won't be a release schedule. It'll just happen intermittently when I find things that are interesting that I want to talk about or share with you. So thank you so much for joining me, and I can't wait to see you in the next one, whenever that is. Take care. Bye-bye.